It's a real pleasure to meet you. I'm really rather stunned and shocked at what you brought along. What can I tell you about it?
Well, I think one of the things that I find really interesting about trophies generally is how different they can all be, from the tiny kind of ashes, the Jules Rimet, and some trophies are massive and seem to represent the magnitude of the competition. It's a big trophy, but it's a very ornate trophy. Is that because it's a product of its time? Would that be to do with the designs in the late 19th century, or is there another reason why it looks like this?
Well, it's a very good question, because having looked at this fairly recently, I noticed that it's embossed with fruiting vines. Now, why would you have fruiting vines embossed on a football trophy? You would normally expect to see a football stuck on top.
Somewhere.
Yeah. And there's nothing on this to indicate that it was made specially as a football trophy. Now, I might be banned from every football ground in the country for saying this, but I suspect this might have been an off-the-shelf piece, that it was not specifically made. I cannot see why it should have fruiting vines on it, because that was a form of design that was used over many hundreds of years, and in fact this sort of shape goes back to ancient classical vases from the ancient Roman and Greek times. But here we have a cup of fairly standard, almost bell shape, campana shape they sometimes call it in auctioneers' catalogues, but with nothing about it that says it's got anything to do with football, except that it's inscribed that it's the FA Cup.
So literally off the shelf in a shop, or
Yeah.
would it have belonged to somebody who donated it?
I think it was probably in a shop. The first FA Cup, which was played in 1872 on a cricket ground at the Oval where Surrey play, that was known as the Little Tin Idol, which is a wonderful nickname. It was made of silver, but that was what it was called. Then in 1895, when Aston Villa won the cup for the second time, they put it on display in a local shop, and with ours, the cup was stolen. So a replica was made, and that lasted till 1910. Then that one was withdrawn because it was discovered that the rival football competition were using exactly the same cup. So in comes this beauty in 1911. Although the marks are completely worn, we know it was made by Fattorini and Sons, and they were Italian immigrants that came to England in the early 19th century, and Antonio Fattorini was the founder of the company. And in 1831, he opened up a shop here in Harrogate. And then they opened up another business in Bradford, and that's where this cup was made.
Made in Yorkshire?
Yeah.
So if this wasn't designed and made for the FA Cup, what would it have been used for?
Well, I think the fact that it's got all these vines and grapes on it, it might have been used as a wine cooler or a champagne cooler, something like that.
I'm sure it's had plenty of champagne inside over the years.
More than you and I could possibly think of, I think.
Is it possible to put a value on something like this, with all that history that you've just described?
I was just going to say, the hardest thing of all about this is trying to put a value on it. This is probably, along with maybe the Wimbledon trophy, the most famous cup in the country. I think quite comfortably this has got to be worth well over £1 million. The highest value piece of silver I've ever valued on the Antiques Roadshow.
Wow.